response. That's fantastic. Now, if I was sat where you are, there are probably 3 questions going through my mind right now. Number 1, who's he? Number 2, why is he here? Number 3, when will he go away? You were thinking it, you were thinking it. So let me just introduce myself. Yeah, name's Angus Farr. It's interesting just talking to Dan earlier. I started off as a student, didn't quite know what I wanted to do something commercial. And I went to the career service, did one of these fantastic surveys that match you to jobs. And the top 3 lists that came out was number 1, chartered accountant, number 2, personnel officer, number 3, prison officer. Now, oddly enough, I did indeed go into chartered accountancy, so I am a chartered accountant. At this point we have to lock the door because most people just run away as soon as I say that. So yes, I went into accountancy, spent many years in accountancy, enjoyed it enormously, woke up one morning and thought, well, I don't really like numbers. Problem. My boss at the time realised I wasn't excellent with numbers and he said, Angus, I don't really trust you to get the numbers right, so I'm going to give you the people to look after. So I went into HR. So I spent about 12 years as head of graduate recruitment, which sounds very nice. Sadly, if you analyse the time I spent in a working week, a truer job description would have been Angus Farr, head of graduate rejection, which does sound a very sad job title to have, but nevertheless, that is what I spent more time doing. Anyway, 3 years ago or so, I decided that I've been teaching sort of commercial skills to people for too long. I would try it myself, so I set up a business. It's not the employability skills one, it's Business Training Counts. We basically develop non-technical skills in technical professionals. So we deal a lot with accountants, lawyers, investment managers, engineers, anybody with a technical qualification. We help them build their non-technical skills and do sort of coaching. The bit of the business that I enjoy the most is employability skills, and that's really helping people understand what employers are really after. Because I think there is a big mismatch between what a lot of students think employers want and what employers actually want. So that's the focus of the next, it's gone to sleep, but I imagine it's 28 minutes. I'm being timed rigorously here, and there's a trap door with a sharp pond underneath, so I'm going to be very careful that I trip through these quite quickly. So what I want to do is really look at one aspect of recruitment this afternoon, and that's the interview, okay? Now, just to set the scene, when I was head of recruitment, and talking to plenty of heads of recruitment now, there's about 30 applications per graduate role. If everybody in this room applied for the same job, chances are you'd all be rejected. Apart from 2 of you. Feel as though I need to apologise. It's not all my fault. It's ferociously competitive out there. Now, in reality, I didn't spend time looking at 30 applications and then identifying the one person I wanted to recruit. Okay, we'd have an assessment centre. Okay, an interview, group exercise, presentation, ability test, personality test, etc. The hard bit is getting from the 30 down to the 5. I would get quite good. Getting from 30 to 1 to 20 to 1, I could probably get through a third of applications within 15, 20 seconds, tops. And the 2 things would either be poor spelling or you overshoot the word requirement. Easy. Poor spelling. If you don't know that there are 2 I's in the word liaise, if you don't know that there is a difference between principal LE and principal AL, I'm not interested. Sorry. If I ask a question on the online application form, describe in 200 words or fewer the last time you contributed to the successful outcome of a team, and you write 230, what you're telling me is either, Angus, I am so bloody excellent at team skills I couldn't possibly tell you in any fewer than 230 words, or I can't count. Or, I don't follow instructions. I'm not going to take the risk that I'm throwing away that first type. You either can't count or you don't follow instructions. Not interested. And I guarantee that'll take you from 30 to 20. So there we are, improved your job to answers by a third, and I've only been talking 4.5 minutes. What are we going to achieve after a full 30 minutes? Wow. So, that's the sort of background. That's the background. Now, if we're focusing on interviews, interviews are just one of many interventions from an HR point of view that you're likely to find. If you strip away all of the gloss from graduate employers, they're basically asking 3 questions of each of you. 1, can you do the job? 2, will you do the job? 3, will you fit in here? And that's basically it. So can you do the job? 3 things. Do you have the knowledge, the skills, the experience? Will you do the job? That's motivation. How much research have you done about my organisation, my job, my clients, me? And I could afford to be picky. Will you fit in? It's very tricky. Part of my day job, we run training courses for corporate clients on how to recruit graduates, which is great. And that's the question we probably spend more time trying to figure out. What is it that we can do to graduates to figure out whether they're going to fit? Now, interviews are okay. They're ubiquitous. I think all graduate level schemes that I'm aware of have an interview at some point. May not be first stage, maybe second or third. Indeed, at the moment, it's invariably second or third stage, simply because an interview is very expensive for an employer, because it involves a member of our staff interviewing you. And there are 30 of you for every one, so we have to get the numbers down. The problem with interviews, they're not actually that good. Anyone studied HR? Occupational psychology? No? Oh, okay, I can make this bit up then. The research that's been done on interviews suggests the correlation of an interview to successful performance in the job is only about 0.2. 0.2. So from an employer's point of view, that gives me 2 problems. 1, there are going to be people who are good at interview, but aren't very good at the job. Strategically, my other problem is there are going to be people who aren't good at the interview, but be brilliant in the job. And 0.2 is not very good. Graphology comes in at 0.1. It's a study of handwriting. And if any of you are sitting there going, who would use that? Well, lovely article in the FT last month. The list of financial sector employers in London now using graphology in their graduate intake. Now, if we had more time, I could probably debunk graphology as a valid selection method, but in a way it doesn't matter. If your chosen employer uses it, you've just got to learn how to get over it. So, interviews are ubiquitous, they are everywhere. Are they useful to employers? Yeah, absolutely. Because most jobs that you guys are going to be aiming for are going to involve interpersonal skills. They're going to involve you talking to other people. Whether those are internal colleagues, whether those are external stakeholders or clients. And an interview is good for an employer like that because not only can they ask you questions that are relevant to the role, the simple process of the interview gives them a good idea as to whether you would be able to do the job. So they're definitely useful to employers. Are they useful to you? Absolutely. In an assessment centre, and certainly without an assessment centre, the interview is the only opportunity you get to wow that employer face to face. And I've certainly done interviews where the candidate has had a bit of a wobble in the group exercise and the verbal critical reasoning test, but they've really pulled it out of the bag for the interview, and that's good. Now, when we have an assessment centre, best practice would suggest that you're really only going to give about 40–50% of weighting to the interview. In actual fact, interviews are probably more important to most employers than employers realise. At the end of an assessment centre, we do all get round a table and we go through a list of candidates and we say yay or nay. Now, most of the people around the table are HR people. And I'm a chartered HR person as well as being a chartered accountant, so I'm allowed to be a bit rude about fellow HR people because I'm one of them. They're HR people. The interviewer is going to be somebody important from the line, a director, a partner. Now, if I don't think you're very good, but let's say the tax partner, if she likes you, even though the interview is only worth 40% of the final decision, it's actually going to be quite difficult for me to argue your case over her. Because it might come down to me arguing either for you or for my job. I don't like you that much. And that works both ways, of course. So the interview, really, really important. Largely, not just because of interview, can ask questions and test your interpersonal, but just the sort of organisational hierarchy of politics and organisations. Now, you are probably thinking right now either, one, so how can I improve in interviews? Or two, I've made a dreadful mistake, this is the wrong room. If it is the first thing you're thinking, how can you improve? Well, there are two ways to improve at being interviewed. Number one is the obvious one. Be interviewed. Get as much interview practice under your belt as you possibly can. Number two, interview. Interview other people. It's absolutely amazing. When we run interview training or coaching and you get an interviewer to, after the end of their interview, and you say to them, how was that interview? What did you think of the candidate? The narrative is either, oh, she was really strong, she was confident, she was articulate, she asked plenty of questions. I think she's an offer. Or, no, he was weak. He was quite timid, clearly very nervous, didn't ask me any questions. No, he's a reject. Nothing about the answers they gave. Nothing about the answers. Now, to be fair, interviews aren't good and you'll have a sheet and you'll write down answers. But the gut feel you get is going to be based on not much on the words used. It's everything else. Now, if you actually interview, you get to see a good answer. It's funny, interviewers say, oh, I saw a really good candidate the other day. Saw. Not heard, not listened to, saw. Body language. I'm not over-egging the importance of body language, but if you interview, you can see what a good answer looks like. You can see how a good person gives that answer. Now, it'd be pointless for me standing here saying, oh, it's quite good to be interviewed and interview, and we've still got 16 minutes left. So for 10 of those minutes, you're going to do some interviewing. Isn't that fun? No, I hear you think internally. It fills me with absolute horror and dread. I really am in the wrong room. Now, take one of these sheets each, please. Pass them along. I'll probably have run out, because I can't count, because I'm a chartered accountant. And that's what we're very good at. There should be plenty. If you get to the end of the row, pass them back. There we are. This is the interactive part of the session, actually passing and looking at your neighbour. Right, on your sheet is a list of questions. In fact, there are questions on both sides. In 2 minutes' time, I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you and interview them. I'm going to look for one of you to be person A and one of you to be person B. So there are questions on the front and questions on the back. So in a moment you can decide who you're going to interview and who's going to be A, who's going to be B, and you're going to ask some questions. Before you do, I've only put a few questions down there. I have left out the killer question. Now the killer question are those questions that if you've been to an interview And you thought, well, it went all very well until the point I was asked ... That's the killer question. Write it down and ask it. Or you might be sitting there saying, Angus, I actually don't have much experience of being interviewed. I'm actually looking forward to the interview. Oh, unless they asked me ... So that's your killer question. So write that down somewhere and make sure you ask it. Now, I'm really hoping for an even number of people here. If there's an odd number, that doesn't matter. I'll be interviewing you. Don't all run away. We have locked the doors. We have locked the doors. So, pair up. One of you will be A, one of you will be B. There are some questions in common, some different questions. See how you go. I'll stop you after 6 or 7 minutes. So after 3 minutes, reverse roles, okay? So A's interview B's. Off you go. If you don't have somebody next to you, or you really don't like them...
I don't have a lot of knowledge. I've been studying about marketing since my university. I know that I really want to gain a lot of knowledge. So,
for hours. You might not even have been talking about what I wanted you to talk about, but you... Okay, very, very quickly, because we've only got 5 minutes, 26 seconds left. What were some of the hard questions there? Weaknesses, okay. Oh, right, lots of it. Okay, fine. So why do employers ask that? Well, employers are interested in how much awareness do you have of your own sort of development needs, okay? When I am training accountants and lawyers and engineers, it's really important that they don't have to come to training courses when you're employed, not often, but they will because they are responsible for their own development. And so one of the skills a lot of professionals learn to develop is being aware of what you don't know, being aware of things you need to do better. Now, with a particular question, what is your biggest weakness? I think it's a rubbish question. Because people ask it a lot, and it's what I would call a peacock question. It's a question that employers ask to show off. So you go, oh, aren't you clever asking that? I mean, obviously, you could be just stupidly, brutally honest. What's my biggest weakness? Ooh, kleptomania and arson. Which is probably not a great opener for most jobs. Or, most graduates I come across know a response they should come up with. What's my biggest weakness? Oh, I work too hard. I come into the office at 7 o'clock in the morning and I work all the way through till midnight. I have no life. I'll just be yours. So that's, okay, you can say that, but it's a bit silly. What I think good candidates will do is use these sort of negative questions. What's your biggest weakness? What are you least looking forward to try and sort of showcase a positive. Now, if that question was the one that you all said that was a difficult one, I'm not saying this is the perfect answer, but I think a good answer would be, ooh, what's my biggest weakness? So repeating it back, looking wistfully into middle distance, if it's the first time you've been asked that, saying, oh, clever you, asking that question, even though internally you're thinking, prat. What's my biggest weakness? Well, if you'd asked me a year ago, I probably would have said poor time management. But over the last 12 months, I've made much more use of to-do lists. I've certainly spoken to a few colleagues and academic staff who I think have got really good time management. And I've read a few articles in the library. So I'm pretty good at the moment. So that's quite a neat answer, isn't it?
It is.
Because basically it starts off with the employer saying, here is a gun, shoot yourself. And what you've managed to do is sort of turn it around and say, well, look, I'm aware of my own development needs. I'm quite happy at asking other people for tips. And I can read. And so I think that's quite a good way. So always think with interview questions, there will be questions that they're not designed to trip you up. They are designed to sort of see how aware you are of your own development needs. But use those, if you can, as an opportunity to sort of showcase some of the skills you've got. Right, that's just about it for me. Hopefully, what I want you to sort of go away knowing is just think about recruitment from an employer's point of view. Those 3 questions. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? Will you fit in here? Ask yourself, can I do that job? Honestly. Will I do that job? Will I fit in here? Think about it from the employer's point of view. With interviews, I mean, we could spend and I often do, spend sort of half a day on programs like this, and we cover all the aspects and all the sort of real quick wins to sort of really wow an employer. But just, I mean, I really do think that with interview, it comes down a lot to how you interact. And there's some nice sort of eye contact and verbal nodding and sort of confident answer giving. And that's what you should mimic. And I really do believe that interviewing other people is a really good way of you improving your skill as an interviewee. So there's one thing you're going to do as a result of this. Go away and sort of pair up and actually interview each other. Interview as much as you are interviewed, so you can actually see what a good candidate says. And I think that is it from me, and you've got a fantastic session coming up, so I'll build you up as much as I possibly can. Thank you all very much for your attention, your good humour. Good luck, and you can achieve success. Thank you very much.